mean, I remember you saying to me, we're going to take down big energy.
Only the biggest problem in the room entertains me. It's as simple as that. TEM's mission is to be in every country across the world, powering all of the world's energy transactions, creating a fairer, more transparent transaction infrastructure, and allowing businesses to absolutely thrive, especially small businesses that compete on a world stage. We've gone from about 300 business customers in November 2024 to now 1,600. We've sort of 3-4x'd in just a period of a couple of months. It's been a wild journey over the last few years, and a brilliant one to have Albion partnered with us in.
It has been a good journey. Long may it continue. Hi, I'm Adam, one of the partners here at AlbionVC, and I'm joined by Joe McDonald, co-founder and CEO of TEM.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Adam.
So, TEM has built an end-to-end energy platform to enable businesses to transact directly with renewable energy generators, removing inefficiency involved in typical energy transactions, with the goal of disrupting the global energy markets and provide access to fairer pricing for companies of all scale. The company was founded by you and your 3 co-founders in 2021 and has since scaled rapidly to over 1,500 customers and close to 100 million of value transacted. I'm glad to say that Albion VC was the first institutional check in TEM in December 2022, and we've continued to back you, including as part of last summer's 10.5 million Series A. To start with, it'd be great for you to introduce yourself and TEM.
Yeah, so I'm Joe. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO at TEM. I've been in the energy space for about 14 years now. Just to make sure everyone's aware, like when I joined, I didn't even know when you flick a light switch on, like how things work, right? But I was fortunate to sort of cut my teeth through a startup that was operating in the space, LimeJump, which I'm sure we'll touch on. And that took me on an amazing journey through the opportunities that sort of energy and the energy markets have, all the way through to founding TEM in 2021. My sort of role alongside the other co-founders is to predominantly think about our product strategy, the vision of the company, obviously funding as well. And it's very kind of you to say, you know, perhaps how brilliant the journey's been so far, but I think really our learnings have been like what not to do. We don't probably know exactly what to do yet. We're still early on in our journey, but ultimately TEM's focus is to power the world's energy transactions, right? And the problem that we face today is pretty stark, as you'll know, and I'm sure we'll touch on. But the opportunity that it creates for a company like us to scale in the space is also massive. I think the one thing that I always start with is I think we're the only company insane enough to focus on the actual transaction in energy, the thing that sits right in the middle. There's a lot of innovation around the edges, and that was actually including my last company. But really to now sit in the heart of the opportunity to disrupt the black box in the middle, the wholesale market, is where we find ourselves. And it's been a wild journey over the last few years, and a brilliant one to have Albion partnered with us in.
It has been a good journey. Long may it continue. But let's start with the early days, the kind of origin stories, and you touched on it there, going back to LimeJump, which was ultimately acquired by Shell. Do you remember post that the moment that you decided that you wanted to jump back into startup life, found TEM? What was the kind of inspiration moment?
Yeah, I've always thought, I don't think I've been the guy that's been selling lemonade since he was a little kid, like natural entrepreneur. But after studying law and then after going into LimeJump and seeing that growth over 7 years and ultimately what was a successful exit, but huge learnings and potentially huge missed opportunities actually at the time as well. I continued to work for Shell for about 12 months after the acquisition. And to be honest with you, that's because no matter what someone might say about big energy or about large companies and what it's like working for them, to learn how a company of 60, 70, 80, 90,000 people works, to understand how effectively the inside of this company works, which actually became a huge opportunity for me to understand where the problem might lie that TEM could solve, was massive. I think what it came down to is the itchiness to start something new came from, I think, two areas. One was I just felt like the mission wasn't complete. As much as it was an amazing exit to get with Ning and Eric, the co-founders there as well. It didn't feel like we'd quite achieved what we wanted to, ultimately selling to a big energy company, a renewable energy trading platform. And the second one, we'd just taken so many learnings. I felt like if I just sit here with these learnings and don't apply again and take my nice pension and take my end of life paycheck, as much as maybe my partner at the time would have enjoyed that, not sending me straight back into the chaos of startups, like not taking that learning back in just felt like a huge loss for me as an individual and the growth I was wanting to have. And hopefully for the market and for the space itself, there's not many entrepreneurs within energy at the moment, because it's not a natural breeding ground, I don't think, for the kind of entrepreneurial space, albeit that is now changing, which is a great thing.
But I mean, to me, it's always felt quite personal. The mission that you were trying to solve, or that you are trying to solve, um, and the vision. I mean, I remember you saying to me, "We're going to take down big energy," which your kind of immediate reaction is to slightly smile because it's such a massive vision. With a vision that big, what was kind of step one? Like, do you boil it right down to a kind of incremental piece?
Yeah, there was, there's a different approach, I think, into how I went through the process of starting the company and getting it off the ground with the other co-founders, and actually step one for Tem and the problem we were trying to solve. So, look, ultimately, and for me personally, only the biggest problem in the room entertains me. It's as simple as that. So, where there's the opportunity for the biggest disruption, or it's even just the biggest imbalance of power, like I could just see that the way things were being done probably hadn't changed for quite literally 110 years, let alone the market and the technology is not changing for the last 40 years with big energy. And seeing that, a very personal story to me happened in a week during the energy crisis, where one of my closest friends for 7 years had come to me and said, I have to shut down my catering company that I've been working on since university. It's been running for 6 years because my energy costs have just gone up by 400%. And she was crying to me, and she was like, I don't understand. And she'd come to me because I'm part of the energy industry, right? And then on that same week, on Thursday, I sat down with my friend who's a trader at one of these big companies, electricity trader, just being paid somewhere close to 700, 800,000 pound bonus for the quarter. And I was just like, that is not a fair market opportunity. And that is an imbalance of power that's not good for individuals, not good for businesses. It's not good probably for society. Then that kind of galvanized the drive, like you saw the passion I had. It's kind of the chip on the shoulder
Yeah.
to try and level the playing field, make it fairer. In terms of sort of specifically how I approached Tem and starting Tem, the first actual step was to talk to the customers. Like, the market is the way it is, not just because the technology wasn't there. It's not just because the timing or the awareness wasn't there. It's because a lot of these customers, their behaviors and understanding their behaviors is so important to actually unlocking the opportunity for a different way of doing things. So we actually spoke to about 20 or 30 customers that I'd known from my Lime Jump days, and we just interviewed them, and we sat down and tried to understand their emotion towards energy. Like, why had they gone the same way and done the same thing they've done for the last 20 years? Why especially were they doing this when they could see that they weren't getting a great service and they weren't getting good prices? Like, we had to understand where the kind of behavioral aspects of that business sat. And part of it was also then a litmus test. Could I get one of those customers to be one of my early sort of checks into Tem? Like, could I get a customer investor who believes in the vision that we then propose to them, the solution we propose, and would then build that brand trust that would help other customers? And we were fortunate that we managed to do both. We interviewed customers. We got our first customer investor, which is Courtine Hall Farms, a small sort of farm and manor house, who invested into us, and transacted with the first transaction through the platform as well. And then that led up to the other kind of stage gates of like starting the company up for the first time, right? Could I convince other really smart people, my co-founders, to join us? Could I convince people that knew me to invest in me? Could I convince a customer with the problem we think we're solving to invest into us? Could I get an investor who didn't know us, who was maybe part of the fintech movement, to believe in what we're doing, invest in us? all the way through to eventually the first institutional check from you guys. It was all part of a kind of stage gating
Yeah.
of, do we have something here that really is meaningful, has the traction that is going to be necessary to take on one of the biggest problems in the world.
I can imagine during those conversations with kind of early customers or past customers from the line jump days, a lot of them would have just not understood a whether there were alternatives or actually what was going on behind the scenes in those energy transactions. How big a challenge or frustration is that whole piece, the kind of education piece? Because I speak to people and I'm nowhere near the expert that you guys are. But no one has a clue about the inefficiencies or really how the energy markets work. How big a challenge is that to overcome?
To be honest, it was probably the best insight we got, which is almost a bit of a depressing one to start with, which is the customers, for us small businesses, had effectively given up. They had just gone, I know I'm probably not getting a fair price. I know that my service isn't great, but I've got to focus on building my business. I can't worry about this. I have no control. And this whole idea we talk about, they're not just disempowered, they're actually disengaged.
Yeah.
So once we realized they're disengaged, the idea that we could educate them on this new exciting mission, they could join us and like focus in on like building the new transaction infrastructure, it was never going to work. What we worked out is we have to make sure that whatever we build underneath, the actual transaction infrastructure is a complete alternative, a new technology and platform. If it required a behavioral change, it would fail. It
Yeah.
would never take off the ground. We needed the product just to be better at its natural state to ensure that that business didn't have to think any harder, didn't have to make a decision that required additional resource deployed into it. It just was a better price and then came with a better service. And then they started to now get engaged. And it's only really probably 2 years later, we're finally getting customers going, wow, I feel now empowered about the kind of tools and the service and insights you give me. And wait, how do you actually give me a better price? I thought you were just another utility. So
Yeah.
we had to almost like morph them now into an opportunity to kind of grow that community through evangelism.
Yeah.
That was never going to happen from day one. That's the best decision we made, is like, no one cares and they will not care. It's just got to be better from day one.
I always say this because as VCs, we love disruptors, right? We're always looking for founders who are disruptors. But in a way, that's quite a dangerous approach to take in energy, because fundamentally, you're talking about businesses keeping their lights on, right? The last thing they want is their energy supply disrupted. So it is a fine line to tread. But you mentioned your co-founders. So TEM was formed by yourself, Jace, Ross, and Bartek. How did the four of you kind of come together, and why do you think you work well together? If you do think you work well together, I think.
Yeah, I
do,
mean, you
but-
have to ask them what
Yeah.
they actually think of working with me. No, so I had known all of them during my time at LimeJump. Very honestly, when I sat down to think about the next opportunity with Tem, the kind of journey I wanted to go on, and my principles for why I'm starting, right? Is it because I want a £1 billion company? Is it because I want to be rich? What it came down to is I really wanted to share the journey with other people. That's actually the thing I enjoyed the most, is kind of fighting against the status quo with a group of people and like building that camaraderie and sharing in the winners' opportunities and also sharing in the losses with other people. And I just said, who is the smartest data science person? Because I know I don't have that skill. Who is the smartest like back-end technical like platform infrastructure person that I've worked with and other people could recommend me, and who is the best like commercial person for opening the doors that would be really needed to open those doors initially. And that literally turned out to be Bartek, Ross, and Jason. Now, I didn't expect them all to join. Now, I just thought maybe that'll be the first people I go speak to, and then when Ross inevitably says no, he's got many other opportunities and he's working in ML and fintech. But again, it was one of those first litmus tests. Immediately, all of them said, we're in. I think it only took Bartek one dinner, one Italian meal, and that was all I needed to do to smooth them over. And that gave me huge confidence. And honestly, that is what's made it possible. I think in the energy space particularly, not only is solo foundership just normally, I think, very difficult. And there are some amazing examples of it. But I think for me personally, it would have been very difficult to achieve that in a normal environment. In energy, you have even more complexity.
Yeah.
So not only do you need the diversity of thought from like running a business, from a technical standpoint, the commercial standpoint, and the like the business and product standpoint, you also need the collective experience of Bartek had built trading platforms for RWE and for LimeJump. Ross had built forecasting already previously. Jason already knew a lot of the market in the UK and actually in the US as well. So that diversity of thought also massively helped in spotting the gaps and unlocking, certainly early on, the necessary like doors and opportunities we needed to actually gain momentum. So yeah, my goodness, not only would it be a horrendously stressful experience in isolation without those, we all kind of compound, I think, each other in that diversity of thought and push towards that.
You are doing, yeah, there's different personalities
Massively different
going.
personalities, yeah. You see it at board, right, as
Yeah,
well, like who does the talking, who does the listening,
yeah,
who actually goes and executes, and that's flown through. I think the one thing that I would say is we aligned very early on what kind of business do we want to build, and like what kind of culture do we want. And although we're all different, at a first principle, like base value, we want the same things from life,
yeah.
at least for now. And that was hugely important. It's already been stress tested. You know, when you raise money and people are questioning, like, how much money do you leave on the table? What valuation you want? Like we said from day one, don't be greedy would be one of our founder mentalities, right? The mission is far more important than whether we're taking a 10%, 20%, 15% dilution. It didn't matter. It was like, who's the right partner is matters. Like, do we have enough money? It matters. Like, we don't need to be greedy. That's already been tested multiple times. All the way through to running like Lord of the Rings style themes across the whole business because we're all super geeks as well, like, which you might not guess on the front of it, but like we
Yeah.
all are massive geeks and that's aligned as well.
Well, I mean, you didn't tell me that you didn't care about dilution when I was talking to you.
You know, well, I do also have that job that I have to push the other side as
Yeah.
well. That's a part of the diversity of thought that we also have.
But so just on that, on the funding piece, I don't think LimeJump raised VC funding.
It raised from strategic VCs. So you had like Statcraft Ventures.
Okay.
You did have Ceph Ventures as well. And the first actual original check, I think, was Jamjar. So like there is a little bit, but we could never really unlock venture capital.
Right.
I think the energy industry from this was 2013 through to 2019, it was seen as too complex,
Yeah.
too much market risk, too incumbent heavy.
Yeah.
Just no one wanted to sort of take a pop at it. And the ones that did in the B2C space, for the likes of Bulb, also saw how volatile that could
Yeah.
be. So
But
it was just very difficult. But I think we also made some mistakes as well, how far we were willing to react to the battery market emerge during the time we started LimeJump. At one point, we were running 30% of the world's batteries through our technology platform. But perhaps we didn't take it a step further and getting into the infrastructure side, because some of those other companies have now scaled to, you know, billions in valuation, and they got their investment more from a traditional sort of funds like debt and other infrastructure and private equity, etc., that came in. But we kind of missed that boat because we were a technology play at the time. So really VC was the area we were looking for.
sure. Which is the road that you went down with us. Also friends at Revent,
Yeah.
Atomico, the Virgin Family Office, and Angels. What's the journey been like for you on that side, going down the more traditional VC route?
Yeah. So again, from day one, we sat down as founders. I get asked this actually a lot with some of my network and other founders I'm around about, do you want to get on the VC treadmill or not? And I think for us, we knew from day one that the space we were trying to come into, the market opportunity and what it would take really ambitious venture capital money. It's almost perfect setup.
Yeah.
The irony being is I would argue that the whole thing of saying too much market risk, too incumbent driven, too complex is the exact type of market you would hope for VC money to flood into. But we were, I think, lucky that the timing of the energy crisis had made it much more of an awareness of how serious this problem was. And combined with the learnings and obviously finding the right venture capital funders in you guys and in Tomoco, who shared the same ambition, who understood the nuances and complexity of the market, despite in some cases being more generalist, like not being just energy specific. For us, I think because we've been really intentional with the people that we've chosen and the bets we've made with our funding partners, it's meant there's been like zero friction to what is already a huge challenge. Like we need to be so aligned on our mission, so aligned from a board all the way down to an employee level, what we're trying to do and how that will be bumpy and the complexities that will come with that in order to win in our space. And so the fact we've had no friction, I think, has been like hugely valuable. And the fact we've found and kind of handpicked the funding partners so far, and the angels as well, have been really strategic. From the likes of the TransferWise, CTO and CPO, um, all the way through to the family office and Virgin, and even like Richard saying, "Hey, this is a David
Yeah.
versus Goliath story," and all of those sort of things have helped unlock doors for us
Yeah.
and never sort of hampered us at any moment, which has been actually maybe unique. 'Cause not everyone always feels like that in this space, but for us, it's been really exceptional.
So what advice do you give to those other founders when you're chatting through to VC or not to VC?
Yeah, it's funny. I think for us, it was just being really intentional. Like we weren't following that path of getting venture capital on board because we felt that was the tick box exercise you had to go through, the tick box exercise. Like we did it because we knew it was going to be necessary to meet the goal and the mission of the company. And so when I speak to other founders who are thinking about bootstrapping or actually bootstrapping really successfully or thinking about the first VC check or angel check, I always make them think about just the two elements of it. Like, is it going to help you with the mission of your company? Is it necessary to achieve that? And who is the person joining you as well? Like a lot of people think about, I think venture capital as the funds and the brand name, etc.
Yeah.
But there's literally, as you have sat on our board, you are an integral part now of that TEM group, that TEM family, that TEM mission. So, it took us probably 6 months to get to know each other before
Yeah.
we actually decided to, partner. That's really important, almost like any relationship. So I'd also say really understand the person that's joining you on that journey, not just think about the brand name or the size of the check.
Yeah. Now you've launched TEM
Mm.
back in 2021. We invested December. It was the Friday before Christmas.
Yes, it was the Friday
It
before
was the
Christmas. I
Friday
remember
before
that very well.
Christmas, December 22. Following that investment, you specifically chose to prioritize platform build over, say, traction and onboarding customers. What was the rationale behind that?
So I think it's an interesting, I guess, two-sided coin in the space we operate. There are so underserved in terms of a customer base, and there is so much market opportunity, and the market is so big.
Yeah.
I think I said to you, I said, I could, without a really robust tech platform, probably build a 0 to 5 million ARR company. I could build that just by offering the customers what we knew they were doing, which was being underserved with a bit of technology and, offer them a discounted price to market. But what I knew to actually have the chance to build a defensible company and one that could rip from 0 to 5, but 5 to 50 and 50 to 100 and 100 to a billion, that would have to come on the back of like genuine IP and genuine technology. And it's really complex. And I think we learned actually, even we thought we were being intentional in saying, okay, let's not chase the early growth and the early market pool that we had because the customers were just desperate for something, actually kind of hold them at the door, which in a way can be used to create a little bit of exclusivity and a little bit of demand. And we actually start to get that with our early customers and partners. But more than anything, it was sort of going back to thinking, okay, the technology has to work, the unit economics and scale economics have to work. And we're building layers of technology here, transaction infrastructure, an AI infrastructure, a customer experience infrastructure, an onboarding and acquisition engine. All of that had to work. Once we started to feel that the end-to-end journey was not only different in terms of the value proposition to the customer against a big energy company, but that I had seen 10, 100 times more efficient internally in terms of the unit economics and scale, that's the moment we said, okay, let's now start taking the foot off the brake, rather than even thinking about putting the foot on the accelerator. So I think having that market pool is like a real blessing. Don't get me wrong. I think we're very lucky. We were really lucky in the timing, but actually making the hard choice to not follow it immediately is probably the reason we've now seen the exceptional growth we've seen in the last, say, 6 months as well.
Yeah. But I mean, even after that, I think a year after we invested, kind of December 2023, was when you not even kind of fully decided to open the taps, just slightly open the taps, just to kind of test and see how it went. And I think you far exceeded your forecasts within that April energy window, just over the first 3 months of that year. But still, after that, you kind of almost shut the taps again
Yeah.
and let the water run through. How difficult was that?
It's so tough to, even just if you think from a people perspective internally in the team, you've got a commercial team raring to go and you've let them go and then you have to kind of hold them back again. But again, like what we saw was, okay, we had this initial market pull. We really need to build a platform, right? The platform now seems to be working. Let's turn on the taps. Let's let the water flow through the pipes. There's a couple of areas where there are still scale issues. So, the technical problem we're solving is like pretty massive. It's actually very exciting. If there's any data scientists out there that want to join something other than just like an LM company, like we have a really cool problem that has a factorial issue, that has a compounding like rate of like optimization parameters. It's like combining Uber versus Amazon fulfillment algorithm into like one kind of pricing model and transaction infrastructure space. That, unsurprisingly, had some like edge issues that were like, we're not quite happy. We could maybe hire 10, 15 people and humans and build an operational flow to like manage that for now. But I've also seen, especially in a complex space like us, how like technical debt and product debt can also kill companies at scale. So we took again the hard decision of saying, hold it back, keep our partners, like we had a lot of indirect business coming, keep them warm, which is very delicate, but like, keep the messaging strong, do a bit of work, go out and do a roadshow, go meet them, like try and build the deeper human connections with a lot of our customers and a lot of our partners, but just don't tell them yet we can turn the tap on. I think we went off for about 3 to 4 months, really double down on the platform again. And then you've seen again kind of launched. And I think that's what allowing us to go, 3x, 5x, 10x, rather than sort of seeing any sort of downward trending growth. It's just, okay, now, and probably actually today, this is the first time we're starting to put our foot on the accelerator in 3 years, which is hopefully exciting for both of us.
Yeah. So I was going to say, what's the kind of current position that you find yourself in?
Yeah, so I think we've gone from about 300 business customers in November 2024 to now 1,600 as of today. So we've sort of 3-4x'd in just a period of a couple of months. That's been, again, doesn't matter how prepared you are. And I think that's the only other thing I can say is you always got to go before you feel 100% prepared. Otherwise, you're going to lose the market opportunity. So balancing that. I think what we're seeing now is all of the elements of the kind of product market fit turn into a little bit more like profit market fit, like good renewals, good retention, good CAC to ROI, good like general growth on customer level, all the way through to gross profit level. All of the things are starting to move in the right direction. And we've matured. I think you've seen us, we now think a lot more strategically about the metrics that we bring into the business. When you're growing from 0 to nearly 100 million in gross revenue, that actually has a lot of implications around how you're now managing cash flow, how you're managing your like financial end of month accounts. Like the stress testing of every element of that has kind of gone through again another growth period. And I think now what you could ask my team is there's now no longer a need to go sort of back onto the brakes and go, but there's definitely a version of we now have maybe 100 opportunities. How do we pick the 3 or 4 that matter? How do we pick the 3 or 4 that still drive us towards the mission, that support the customer needs, and not almost chase every opportunity that's being thrown at us? So actually now becomes more of, I'd say, like a prioritization game for us. But again, that's a good problem to have ultimately.
And part of the challenge you have is you've got 2 sides to try and keep in balance, right? You've got the supply from the generators, and you've got the demand from the businesses. How big a challenge is that? Does it get easier as you get more liquidity?
Yeah, it's probably actually worth just very simply explaining that the problem we're solving today is that the cost that a business is paying for their electricity is 25-30% higher than the true cost that energy is being produced at by a generator. And this is a data transaction problem. We're not talking about the physical flow of electrons. That's like the big kind of like wow moment, I think, for people coming into energy. The same way maybe I move money from one bank account to another, no one's physically picking up the cash and moving it there. This is all about data reconciliation. And at the moment, that data reconciliation problem is going through 7 or 8 intermediaries, all with their different roles, all sequentially sort of layering on their fees and transaction costs to get in between the buyers and the sellers. So our simple proposition was, if the true cost that an independent generator is generating at can be closer to the cost that a business pays, so we cut out those intermediaries and we create a much more direct transaction through a new transaction infrastructure, we should be able to return much better prices to the businesses, put more money into the generators' pockets, and actually for the first time in history, show a fully traceable payment flow through a single complete transaction, which just hasn't happened in electricity. Now, coming back to your question, how do you make sure you have two sides of that platform? The key unlock was to assume that we are not going to operate like a marketplace. Like, this is not a marketplace play. So I don't want to build a business that, for example, if a seller turned up, like a generator turned up or a business turned up and there wasn't an opportunity, they got to walk away. So we had to find quite clever ways of basically building unlimited liquidity on one side or the other. And so how we focus that is, yes, linked to typical marketing. Sometimes we'll focus more on unlocking our businesses. Sometimes we're focusing more on our independent generators. But it's also thinking about the business model and flow and how we ensure that when a business turns up, no matter what, they're getting some value, even at the extent that we don't have someone to immediately transact them with. So the product became hugely important all the way through to the actual business model and our partner setup as well. So yeah, in short, now we don't need to worry about the two-sided elements of it. But we do have to build a two-sided function within our people. So you don't have the same partner, like business development people looking after the ICP, which is the ideal customer profile of a small business, than you will for a large generator. They have different needs. Marketing has to think about messaging and serving separately as well. And so that in itself, no matter what, does create the kind of dual purpose through our customer experience and our team structures within TEM.
Is it fair to say that it's far more complex than when you kind of, back in 2021, first set out to try and solve the problem?
Yeah. Back in 2021, I was like, right, if we just get business turning up, we'll just compare the market and just plop them with a generator, right? Like, I just thought it would be easier. But timing distribution between when a business will want to take the next energy contract versus a generator, the issues that come with direct contracting and peer-to-peer elements that we've had to kind of like remove through this many matching, billing and payments, the acquisition funnel and model. There is a lot of comfort, I think, taken in the complexity, because for me, the more complex it is, hopefully the more defensible it is, right? This is not going to be something that someone can just spin up another like version of the product really simply and just loss lead against you. This is complex. But at the same time, we need to balance the interoperable nature. Like, we don't want to just be in the UK. Like, this is a 320 billion pound transaction fee problem worldwide, right? Our mission is to take that on. So again, how do you also make sure you're not building so customized for the UK in a technology to allow it to be more interoperable to go to the US, to go to Australia, to go to parts of Europe? That balance at a product and technical level is why, again, having someone like Bartek, having someone like Ross, having three people that are product minded, technically minded, and hands-on in the code, has been incredibly vital for us in navigating the complexity of the ultimate like opportunity that we're trying to solve for,
whilst also keeping it, so as you said,
it's got to keep it simple at the top level.
No behavior change for customers.
It's like a swan on a lake. We talk about it. The customer can only have an enhanced experience. They can't have a changed experience, at least for now. And hopefully that can change over time, but it's not going to change for the next few years, that's for sure.
And what's been your approach to building the culture at TEM?
Again, that word intentional, I think, with Lime Jump, we definitely didn't learn what to do, but I think we learned a few things not to do. And so when we came into TEM and as a founder group, and we'd seen what happens when you go from 0 to 120 people, and how quickly things can change and shift, we've really tried to surround ourselves with some experts. So we've had the likes of your platform team supporting us. My first senior hire was a head of people. Before CFO, before marketing, before business development, before product, anyone, it was people. And I think that set the intention that we know probably, again, the biggest risk to our company is like, do we have the right people structure to scale and compete? Because another advantage we have, we're never going to have more resource than Big Energy in any area. And we're never going to have more people than them. But if we can be more effective and efficient with the deployment of those people, if we can create a culture and environment where genuinely it's okay to fail, genuinely it's okay to push hard when we need to, but is also sustainable because this is a long mission that we're going to be on. How do we actually flow that through? So I would say in the last 6 months, I've almost spent more time thinking about our people operation frameworks than even the business model now, right?
Yeah.
That's how obsessive we get about it. Our own heartbeat process, our own expert versus management culture, like everything linked to the North Star, like even the fact that they're called OKRs, but we call them quests because it's more in line with our DNA and our culture. How do we create feedback? All of these things we talk about twice a week. We call the people responsible this coaches, not managers. The typical like hierarchical structure of a manager doesn't exist at TEM.
Yeah.
Experts go all the way to the top. Managers are 1 out of 8 people that only become a manager because they love it. There's no progression in terms to being a manager, right? And so these aspects to really validate that you've got the right people leaders in the business, I think are paying off now. But already we're going from say 50 to 70, 80 people. You can already see things break at the seams a little bit. We're also a remote first company, so it's even harder. Massive opportunity and talent pool, way more expensive and way more intention in how you keep people aligned,
Yeah.
how you make people feel connected to the mission, etc. So yeah, I don't think we've got it perfect, but what we do is invest a lot of time and resource in it, knowing how important it's going to be for our success.
And of course, you've got TEMFest,
Yes, yeah, which sorry, but
which
no investors are allowed to come
irks
to.
me
But
every time.
yeah, twice a year we fly the whole company out somewhere, and we have 3 days of learning, growing, like collaboration. We call it like it's collisions. Like we cannot get away from the fact that if you're not in person, there is a lost opportunity. So we very intentionally try and still create that as a company. Remote first doesn't mean work from your bedroom. It's kind of our like mantra that we try and like bring through. And yeah, unfortunately for quite a while longer, you won't be able to make the. I think our next one's Morocco, so I'll send you some pictures.
Yeah, I do get the pictures. Um, so just in the context of kind of big energy and trying to disrupt big energy on a global scale, how do you see the overall market opportunity for TEM?
So yeah, our mission is to take the 317 billion pounds of transaction fees, that's just the transaction profit taken by big energy, and take that down to zero. I think currently we've saved somewhere close to 17 to 19 million pounds in transaction fees for our customers. So I think we're 0.006% of the way there, right? So the scale and the ambition, I think, is huge, and the opportunity is equally huge against big energy. But they also have a role to play. Like they exist for a reason. This is not just, a typical, oh, well, the state has mandated this. This is a natural outcome of what is a very complex market where you need a lot of roles and a lot of old systems to support the way the system used to be, which is large assets delivering power to lots of customers. But now what we have is lots of distributed generation assets delivering it to millions of businesses that are becoming more and more prosumer. So that sort of transition that's naturally happening, that's linked to governmental policy, environmental policy, generally just improvements in like technologies at a business level, is allowing for an opportunity to actually take on the incumbents. Otherwise, you're going to be fighting a losing battle if you don't have that momentum of the timing, the behavioral and awareness, understanding, and the technology innovation that we've had. Again, if we hadn't had the innovation that's happened in the machine learning, data science, and AI space in the last 3 years, we couldn't have built the product.
Yeah.
Literally, it's as simple as that. So all of that combines to a moment in time we have where the door is open just enough to potentially disrupt one of the biggest industries in the world. Luckily, also, we can see a little bit how fintech did this 10 years ago. And so there's a bit of a playbook there that we can take and learn. There are some things that apply, there's some things that don't apply.
Yep.
But that again gives us some guidance of how to also sort of attack and approach this kind of window of opportunity. And that window will close at some point, and things will be the way it's always been, and the power imbalances will stay the way they are. And so we take that very personally at TEM. Like we have that pressure and that weight of, if we don't do it, who might do it? Maybe no one. So let's do it now and let's do it quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you've also got seemingly the kind of perfectly formed team of co-founders in that you are very different. You complement each other in terms of skills. You don't actually complement each other in terms of words all that much. And you're also actually quite competitive.
Yeah. We, for those that and I genuinely suggest this is a good thing to do. As founders, we have our complete separate check-in from the leadership team where we just talk about how we're feeling. Like, is childcare too much right now? How much money would it take for someone to buy our loyalty out from each other? Simple things that sound silly, but actually we have that theoretical debate, all the way through to then, going away together and making stupid bets on who can win at a high rocks between each of us, right? And then competing and doing a physical activity that at least 3 out of 4 of us don't really want to do, but we're doing it to win against each other. But it keeps that kind of friendly competition between us without it suddenly becoming a friction that causes problem. And I hope that is going to be a real superpower for us as we grow, because for founders is a huge opportunity. And I think a lot of business would show over time that eventually changes. I think for us, we really have done that kind of alignment on a value basis early on. As much as competition isn't perhaps the most elegant version of one of our values, it's there, and like it drives us all to kind of do better for each other as well.
And have you seen the relationship evolve?
I've seen individuals involved massively evolve. So like, we didn't naturally go, right, I'm CEO, you're CPO, you're CTO, and you're CCO. We kind of went, what job do we want to do? What gives us energy? Leave our ego at the door. And that doesn't really matter kind of what title we have. And what we've then seen is then people have evolved in their specific function, right? So you see the sort of Ross has become this absolute, we even call it, it's like our wizard. It's our like top level expert at the company. He's just unlocking doors for everyone else. But he doesn't want to manage people, right? Bartek, who is now managing the largest function of TEM, the engineering team, has just massively evolved into a exceptional kind of technical leader. He had never managed people before, right? So what we do is we pick the things we want to do and we talk about the energy it gives us. We talk honestly whether we're good at it, and then we've kind of doubled down the investment. And that's been awesome to see. Like, part of the sharing the journey is also seeing the progress in each of us and how we evolve. Now, I'm not sure they would be so friendly to me. I hope they would, but possibly not in public.
They actually are behind your back.
Behind my back, maybe.
Not all the time. But they are. And for you personally, do you think there's any kind of life experiences which has shaped you as a founder, as a leader?
I was trying to think about this. It feels like naturally every founder has to have some sort of chip on their shoulder, and I've been trying to work out like what mine is and what sort of drives me. I think I am very fortunate that even my family from an early age put me in experiences that just really expanded my worldview, right? From taking me to Zimbabwe when I was 2, right? And to taking me to a music festival when I was 3, and just having all of this kind of sensory overload. And I think that's combined with a lot of sport that I've done has taught me high performance teams, especially like when I played a higher level of different sports, but ultimately rugby in the end. I learned what it's like to win as a team, not as an individual, and I really like that. I learned what it takes to be top level, and I watched other people who ultimately went on to be the best, some of the best in the world, come up with me, and I saw what it took and what I didn't have at that point and what I wasn't willing to commit. I think all of those learnings came in to doing a law degree, which again, I realized I loved because I loved the analytical and problem solving side, but I actually didn't want to be a lawyer. And finally, it all kind of, from almost feeling quite lost in my early 20s, like, what am I doing in my life? Like, I didn't know entrepreneurship was a thing. I was thinking I'll just go and, I don't know, learn how to do sales and, work in London, or the opportunity of kind of like falling into entrepreneurship, all of that collective experience suddenly made sense to me for the first time. But I'd say before that, I really didn't know what I wanted to be or what I wanted to do. And from that point onwards, I've been able to lean on a lot of those experiences and find about, no, this is the thing I can be the best at. Like, this is the thing I love and that gives me energy. And actually helping other people in businesses, helping them like compete, changing the status quo and getting rid of like that kind of like laziness that exists in the market, just being a disruptor. But that combines with all of those other kind of opportunities that I've had. And the honest, deeper truth is that I think I'm very lucky and privileged in the stability of like my background, of how I've been brought up. We talk about like, it's not wealth inheritance. I didn't get a load of money from my parents to start TEM. I fought for that, right? But the stability capital and the kind of like family capital I've had from them to be able to take risks, I think, is huge. And part of me that I think drives at least what I'm doing now is, if I don't take advantage of this opportunity, that's just such a shame, because there's a million people who would kill to have the same opportunity and background I had to do something like this. If I just sat on the fence and wasted my time on the planet, so there's an element of guilt, which is probably one of the deepest drivers of getting something done, that I think is actually fed into what kind of gets me up every morning and pushes me to do more for TEM and for our mission.
So what does success look like for you, for TEM?
Look, as I said, TEM really is on that mission to take those billions and put them back into the hands of our users. We want to build a product that's going to have a significant impact on the trajectory of humanity, right? So I've seen what compute did from the 1970s onwards. Cost of compute coming down unlocked all of these amazing business opportunities, all the way to what we see today. The reason we have LLMs is the cost of compute has gone down.
Yeah.
Everything comes back now to an electron and the cost of that electron. The cost of that electron will define world orders. It will define market opportunities. It will define humanity's chances of success. And I feel like I'm right in the heart of that. So I think it would take a lot to make any of us as founders, think about moving on, which means this is a long game for us. TEM's mission is to be in every country across the world, powering all of the world's energy transactions, creating a fairer, more transparent transaction infrastructure, and allowing businesses to absolutely thrive, especially small businesses that compete on a world stage. I think probably that's why it aligns with the ambitions of the kind of partners and funders we've got. This isn't a billion-pound company. This is a much bigger market opportunity for us. But what comes with that is then the commitment to that long-term vision, the commitment to smaller decisions that we made. Go slow now so we can go faster later. All of those things flow through to what I hope is going to be a incredibly impactful company for the world.
And what makes you think it's achievable?
It's just pure blind optimism.
Yeah.
I don't know, every founder, I think you have to have that. I say I'm an optimistic realist, so I try and think about the reality of the situation. But what I think I lost a little bit as a first time with Lime Jump was I was so naive. I didn't really understand how impossible the situation were and the odds were stacked against us. So you kind of just go into every situation very positive. Second time around, you're analyzing everything because you're like, my goodness, how lucky was I then? I didn't realize. So the more I've lost that naivety, I think the more I've had to just rely on pure blind optimism. The problem is big enough. We've got the right people. The timing is right. We're very lucky for that. And those ingredients should mean that we're going to do what we set out to do. And we just execute every day, into every week, into every 2 weeks, into every month, into every quarter. We just focus down and execute and really prioritize towards that mission, hoping that'll be enough.
Well, early evidence is pretty good.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
long
So
may
you're
it
not being
continue.
boring either.
Yeah. So just to finish off then, if you could go back to 2021 and speak to that version of yourself, what would you tell them?
I think it'd probably be two things. I think I would say I'd just tell myself it's okay to fail and to learn a little bit quicker than I was willing to. I think I probably took 6 months of just walking my dog every day, rethinking the business model, rethinking before taking action. I should have just picked up the phone to a customer, because it would save me a lot of time and stress in my own head to just listen, understand the problem, and just see that moment of this is a real problem. And that's the confidence I need, not just the number of podcasts I've listened to about 7 powers and how I need to structure the business and how I need to put together a pitch deck. Just go out, speak to the customer, put something in front of them. It's okay if they don't take it,
Yeah.
And then I think the other one would have just been that, super honesty. It would just be saying that you're really going to enjoy it this time. I was so anxious. I gave up a lot in my 20s with Lime Jump, a lot. It's ended relationships for me. It became all-consuming in every way. I tied my personal identity to success of the company. That's really tough I almost felt anxious, my body had a defense mechanism about starting a new company, that it was trying to avoid that same level of stress. And just hasn't been the case, because again, I've surrounded myself with good people. We've taken those learnings. We've been more humble. We've embraced the opportunity a lot more and embraced the journey and not been so obsessed about that outcome. I just trusted in the process. And And again, I think if I could have just told myself, look, it's going to be okay this time, you're not going to be in the same situation you were. You're still going to have a life. You're still going to be able to keep, friendships and partners, and you're still going to be able to go for your morning walks with your dog in the heath and like relax and unwind.
Send voice notes.
Yeah, send voice notes to Adam all hours of the day. I think it's honestly just telling me it'll be all right, and I hope that to be the case moving forwards.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for joining.
No problem
to
at all.
have you.
No, thank you so much. It was a pleasure being here.